I got to ask you about this Buffalo Sabres trade, because this seems like Carolina, they take a winger. You see, this winger who scores a lot of goals for them might be an elite talent, especially when he's healthy. They throw him under the bus a few times, and then they flip him to Buffalo for a bunch of magic beans, which do not amount to equal value. Are you, A, surprised that it wasn't the Edmonton Oilers doing this? And B, what do you think about the trade itself and Carolina's ability to score next year?
Well, Carolina, I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast 1,000 times. The worst teams in the NHL are the teams where you don't know what direction they're heading in. You don't know what they are. We said this like 3 years ago about the Vancouver Canucks, and time has proven us unfortunately correct if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. I think the Hurricanes did well in getting Dougie Hamilton, but like I'm starting to wonder if that was just like a bit of a fluke or if it was actually smart. Because I don't know what this team is. I have no idea, and it's annoying me because a team we're mostly 90s kids, so hating on the Habs, like that was a bit of an older Leaf fan thing. For us, it was the Sens who I hated and the Sabres. And I'm annoyed because I think they've had a decent summer, and I think they're going to actually put together a decent team. And it's kind of a 1-year show-me contract, except it's show me for Buffalo, not for Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner's the established, proven guy. If Buffalo can prove to be a young, exciting team worth staying with, I think they have a good chance of re-signing Jeff Skinner. So divisional rival making smart decisions, that's annoying if I'm a Leafs fan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and he had to waive his no-trade clause to agree to this thing. Jeff Skinner did, going from Carolina to Buffalo. The Sabres were dead last in that meat grinder of a division last year. It's hard to imagine. We were just talking about it, Steve, last hour. Tampa, Boston, or the Leafs not in the top three again. And then you look at the rest of that Eastern Conference. It's going to be rough, but man, that Sabres team, okay, they need to make a step forward. Again, it's hard to go backwards when you are dead last in the division, but making the playoffs still, though, is going to be such a near impossible chore for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty tough ask, and I think it gets even tougher with, Florida had more points missing the playoffs last year than the Leafs did making the playoffs the year before. And I think they've had a pretty good summer, and they've gotten even better. So, is Buffalo better than them? I don't think so. But, once they drop the puck, as we kind of know, on paper stuff just kind of goes out the window. All of a sudden, a guy gets hurt in the first week of the season or first month of the season. Last year, that was Buffalo. That was Jack Eichel going out with a high ankle sprain. So if they get luckier in that regard, maybe the team's a little bit happier because they don't have Robin Leonard stinking up the change room, because it sounded like they were pretty sick of his shenanigans. If they can score a few goals, Rasmus Dahlin gives them a huge shot in the arm. There's a bunch of new personalities. You don't get your team's leader and Ryan O'Reilly talking about how he doesn't even like hockey anymore. They could have a very different season.
Well, and they have the one, they seem, at least on paper, and again, once the puck drops, it's different, but they seem to have the one thing that teams like Carolina have lacked, which is a goalie who can get you league average numbers, and that's really what you need.
Yeah, Carter Hutton is boy, it's a risky investment and one they might regret. They needed to make a change for sure, but that's not the most stable goaltending. He might make us eat our words. A few years ago we were talking about how he stunk, and now he earns $3 or $4 million per year. But ironically, his contract reminds me a lot of Scott Darling's. So who knows? At the end of next season, Buffalo could be a much improved team, or they could look exactly like Carolina last year.
Right.
Yeah, what we were talking about yesterday, Steve, is the Athletic published their confidence rankings in NHL front offices as ranked by fans, and the bottom 5 all being Canadian franchises. I think, not surprising, the Ottawa Senators dead last. Mark Stone signs the extension for $7 million,
which is right in the middle of what he wanted and what the Sens wanted in arbitration.
Right, and now Pierre Dorian's talking about, this is the first step, and now we can discuss a longer-term deal. Man, it happened during the summer. And it was probably a couple of months ago that you went from laughing at Senators fans and that franchise to like feeling pure sympathy. Feels like another one of those moments.
Yeah, no, I just feel bad. And this is what I was sort of tweeting about a couple hours ago. I look at the Sens, and I look at everything they've done. Carlson's expiring. I think Duchesne's expiring. We now know Mark Stone is expiring. Cody Ceci is going to be expiring. So at the end of next season, at this time next year, the July 1st next summer, out of the 50-man roster limit, the Sens are going to have 25 guys to re-sign, 13 unrestricted free agents, 12 restricted free agents. So I looked at this, and I tried to be optimistic, and I go, okay, how different is this from the Leafs of a couple of years ago? It's not. It gives them a ton of flexibility, and if they hold on to the guys worth holding on to, if they trade anyone, like over 31 or something like that, if they make some clever signings, clever trades, they get a boatload of draft picks, maybe see if you can, find a guy, even like a Nikita Soshnikov, like out there who I had never heard of, and he comes in and he's at least a prospect in your system. There's a lot of potential there. And then there's the big asterisk of, there's no Austin Matthews on route. Like, they don't have their first rounder. And this is what I was saying as a Leafs fan, trying to give some helpful advice to Sens fans. When the Leafs traded their first round pick a year ahead of time in the Phil Kessel deal, that hung over the team the entire season. The last 3 times the Leafs have traded a first round pick over a year ahead of time, the player they gave up was Scott Niedermayer one time, Roberto Luongo the other, and Tyler Seguin the next. You don't do it. It hangs over you the entire time, and if you screw up, it could be a disaster. It looks more and more like they're going to give up a top 4 pick to Colorado next year. So they have a ton of flexibility and the potential to turn this around, but without that X factor pick coming in next year, could be a world of hurt.
Well, and that might have been the biggest error. They were bound to determine that they were going to take that 4th pick this year because they had the choice, right? It was either Colorado, they gave them this year's pick, or next year's pick. They decided to hang on to this year's pick, and it's outside of the top 3, which I think at top 3, fine. Mm-hmm. I get it. Hang on to that pick. Mm-hmm. And then they pass on Zadina as well, which was a huge sort of wow moment. I am a little surprised because if you drop Mark Stone, if he's a rental at the deadline, if you drop Erik Karlsson, if that trade finally goes through, or you decide to trade Matt Duchene, which they seem to not want to do because of how much they gave up to get him, you're going to get a first-round pick that's in the low 20s. You're going that player is going to a playoff team. And it's not like if Erik Karlsson goes to Vegas, Vegas is not going to be a bad team. If Erik Karlsson ends up somewhere else, whatever team gets him is not going to be bad, but the Senators 100% even now are guaranteed to be. It just seems like a poor choice. And I wonder if there is anything that they can do with those 3 guys in terms of asset management to at least soften that blow, because either way, it seems like they're going to be in the lottery conversation and hoping and praying that they're not top 3.
Well, yes, and you mentioned a name in there, and you mentioned Matt Duchene, and they don't want to trade him because they're not going to get as much in return for him as what they gave up. What, are you afraid of looking bad? You're the Ottawa Senators. You couldn't possibly look worse. Swallow your pride, accept that you suck, and it's your fault you suck, and make this trade in the hopes of not sucking. Use your head. Use your head, swallow your pride. Hockey guys, man. Hockey guys. Look, you made a mistake. What are you going to do, make it worse?
Well, I mean, they did with Hoffman.
Exactly. Listen, or see if you can re-sign Duchene, because, one thing I think, I keep comparing the rebuilds, but let's face it, the Leafs sucked a few years ago. One thing that the Leafs did very well is they kept guys worth keeping. So they signed Nazem Kadri to that contract long term, and at the time you're like, okay, I hope this works out. And now it's one of the biggest sweetheart contracts in the league, and it's part of the Leafs' strength down the middle, that 3-headed monster. If you can sign Duchene to an extension, that's excellent. If you can't, swallow your pride and get as many draft picks as possible. Buckle up, because if you think you suck now, you're going to suck a whole lot worse.
Yeah. This isn't the bottom yet.
To get better in the future. Sell hope. Sell hope. You got this new team in Belleville that wasn't good last year, by the way. But if you do sort of what the Marlies did a few years ago, if you're able to fill that roster with young, exciting players, you make Belleville Senators games fun to go to. That's well east of the GTA. You might convert a bunch of fans out there. You give Sens fans something to hope for. If you stock those shelves, good for you. But if you hold on to Matt Duchene because of pride and you're worried what you're going to get back, use your head. Use your head or get out of the sport. You've got to get creative here. You're the Ottawa Senators. You're screwed unless you do something smart.
This is a hell of a pep talk.
Yeah, really.
I really enjoyed that.